With the conclusion to Peacemaker Season 2, Year 1 of James Gunn's new DC reboot has finished. So I'm going to rank all 3, but I'm going to make it 4 DCU projects that have been released thus far. Hi, my name is Nathan, and I like to talk about a lot of movies and TV shows on this channel. If you're new here, down below in the comment section, share your ranking of all the James Gunn DCU projects. Now, the way he described this universe kind of was everything Superman, Creature Commandos, and Peacemaker Season 2, but I decided to just throw in Peacemaker Season 1 in here, and in this particular ranking, I decided to split up the two seasons. I don't know if I'm going to be doing this in my later rankings as the years to come of James Gunn's DC reboot universe. Like, maybe later on I will include Peacemaker both seasons as one, but I decided to throw in Peacemaker Season 1 in here and split the two seasons just this time around to make my stance pretty clear on the two seasons. So share your ranking down below. If you want to include the Suicide Squad, I didn't include the Suicide Squad, but if you want to include that, share your ranking with it down below in the comment section. And if you enjoyed this video, click the like button, be sure to subscribe because that really does help a lot. And let's just get straight into it. In last place is Peacemaker Season 2. And it really does pain me to say this because I was such a massive fan of the first season of Peacemaker whenever it came out. And I was so excited going into this new season. I was so curious to see how James Gunn would pull in these characters that I love from the old universe and bring them into this universe. The way he actually did it, I thought worked well enough, as he just did like a simple retcon in the recap. The actual season itself, I didn't think was nearly as good as I wanted it to be. Now, there's still some enjoyment factor into this season because I do enjoy these characters' company. I think there's a compelling enough continuation of certain characters, Harcourt and Chris, but Harcourt in particular, I think it was a natural continuation of where to take this character, and I thought it made the most sense for her in particular in this season. James Gunn's signature humor is all on display here. There's another memorable opening dance, much like the one in the first season. But also, this was a season that just felt entirely like it was trying to prop up a future Superman movie that might be awesome, but instead what that did was sabotage this season as a whole. You see, this season is not just Peacemaker Season 2, it is the ending to the entire show. And so the way they chose to end things, and that we're never going to see a proper follow-up or a Season 3 to this and these characters, ended on just this really, really sour note. It made the entire journey feel like it wasn't all that interesting of a story, and the elements in there that were interesting, they chose not to focus on. So the fact that Chris is going off to this other universe, finding a new angle in which how he would be tempted to stay in this universe where he has a caring family, it all just seemed kind of pointless by the end. It felt like they were setting up something that they were never actually going to pay off. Especially since this is the ending to the show, it just really soured me on things like that. There's no strong plot here. There's no goal that the characters are trying to overcome, as the finale is just kind of Rick Flag, his villain arc through a whole bunch of music videos. And that's just what's really frustrating here, is that it felt like they were setting up all these interesting things, but they chose not to focus on those and chose to focus on Rick Flag, who I just don't think is all that good of a villain and is not really all that good written of a character. As in Creature Commandos, he was this kind of this buffoonish leader that is not making very good decisions in these missions in Creature Commandos. And in this one, he all of a sudden turns into like outright genocidal maniac. It doesn't feel like a natural continuation of the character, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So for me, unfortunately, like, of all of these, looking at this, I just think this one has to go in last because it genuinely, like, it bothers me that this is a part of this continuity, and that this is just merely a setup for something that could potentially be awesome. But this season as a whole didn't work. Number 3 is Creature Commandos, a fine but forgettable show that was cranked out as the start to the DCU. And as the start to the DCU, it's not really a good introductory point. So, it's not a series that does a whole lot of like world building for the universe. It's just a snippet of what's in it. And that's fine, but the show itself is just not all that memorable. It does kind of try to do the James Gunn bag of tricks where he takes a group of people that nobody knows about. Same thing with Guardians of the Galaxy, Suicide Squad, things like that. It does that bag of tricks, but just not nearly as effective. And I think this is an example of like a harmless, a very well-intentioned for sure series of television that was kind of misconstrued and misguided in ways that I think hurt the show in ways that I don't think I can compare it favorably to the other James Gunn projects. And coming off of that is that what James Gunn is so good at is having these group of characters that find family with each other. And he has a group of characters in this movie, but it's not necessarily about them finding family with each other. And so they don't really have a lot of chemistry with each other. They don't really have the most interesting dynamic with each other. They're just kind of there. And the dynamics that they do have, the interactions that they do have, aren't very memorable. The main plot is very forgettable to me. Like, sometimes I forget what our actual plot was. I remember the final twist, which was unbelievably predictable. Like, once you get to the middle of the season, the twist at the end becomes very predictable, but also very forgettable at the same time on a plot level, and just held no tension in whatever this group was trying to do in protecting this princess. The Amazonians get involved at some point. It just wasn't very memorable. It lacked any sort of tension or forward momentum. And what the show did focus on instead of the main plot were these backstories in each individual episode for each individual character. And by the time you get to the midpoint of the show, the backstories just get super repetitive. Like, they used this template for the backstories and they kind of just repeated it all throughout. It just felt very repetitive to me. And so by the time I got to the middle of it, I was kind of just predicting what would happen in the backstories correctly. And so this is just an example of like, it's harmless, it's well-intentioned, I don't hate it, it's not bad, but it's just not all that good. I just think James Gunn miscalculated this. Maybe it's the episode lengths, maybe it's the way he decided to go about showing this set of characters for the first time, but overall it just didn't have the emotional hook that pretty much the rest of the 3 projects on this list, even Peacemaker Season 2, have. And the reason I actually placed this one over Peacemaker Season 2 is because Peacemaker Season 2 kind of bothered me that it was in this continuity, how it was made and how ill-conceived it was. This one didn't offend me the way Peacemaker Season 2 did a little bit, but it still wasn't like a home run like other James Gunn projects that I really enjoy. Number 2, Superman 2025, and to be pretty clear, there's a pretty big gap going from Creature Commandos to Superman 2025 because I enjoy Superman 2025 quite a bit. Now, while I don't enjoy it as much as most people do, I still think it is a very good adaptation of the Superman character that is just, it feels like it was ripped straight out of a comic book. The color scheme, the bright colors, the way Metropolis looks, the Justice Society, the Justice Gang in the background, like, everything just looks like it's ripped straight out of a comic book, taking panels and putting them on the screen, translating them so well, and that's what I think that this movie does the best. It feels like a very colorful, very faithful adaptation of a Superman comic book, and much of that goes down to the very good casting of David Corenswet as Superman, but also Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor, which I didn't think would work when they first announced him, actually does work in this movie really well as just a hateful version of the character, absolutely diabolical character, and a large, exciting, blockbustery third act in the back half that it just has a bunch of life thrown into it. There's so much energy that goes into this film, and it has a more hopeful symbol in Superman that we kind of haven't seen a proper hopeful adaptation of Superman since, in live action cinematic form, since like Christopher Reeve's Superman. And this movie kind of recaptured that, and it was just kind of a feel good summer blockbuster that just happens to be the main kickoff to James Gunn's DC reboot. Now, I did feel like the movie felt too much like it was one step ahead of me throughout this entire runtime, because it feels kind of like the sequel to a Superman movie that I hadn't seen, because it kicks off and he's like in the middle of a battle, and it feels like that was picking off a cliffhanger that leapt off from a non-existent Superman movie. It doesn't really bother to explain some things, and you get like a scenario where like Lois Lane's about to break up for Superman for pretty much no reason, and like it kicks off and there's already a war going on between two countries. Lex Luthor has another dimensional portal that, like, I don't need the origin story, but it also felt like a sequel to a film that I had never seen, because it's jumping straight into this lived-in world, and it was kind of jarring. I've only seen it one time. Maybe on second watch it'll play a little bit better, but I just thought that the film maybe would have benefited a little bit more if there was a short or a film before this one, because this feels like Superman 2, the conclusion to the Superman 2-part epic. But I still thought that this movie was very good. I might not have loved it like most people did, but I still had a very good time with it. But for me, pretty easily for me, coming in first place is Peacemaker Season 1. And like I mentioned with Peacemaker Season 2, the reason I was so excited to watch Peacemaker Season 2 was because I absolutely love this season, and I still stand by that to this day. And I think of all the DC projects that James Gunn has done, including his DCEU projects with DCU projects, I think if you combine all this DC work together, I think Peacemaker Season 1 is probably the absolute best example of utilizing James Gunn's skill set in the world of DC. What's truly impressive about Peacemaker is that it really does make you care about these characters that are actually nobodies. Whereas with like Guardians of the Galaxy, you still get space lords and superheroes and things like that. The Suicide Squad, you get more superheroes and things like that. Here is actually just Peacemaker, the jerk from the Suicide Squad, and a bunch of nobodies who are just typing on computers as basically minor cameos in the Suicide Squad. You get these characters that barely appeared in the Suicide Squad, and when I first watched this trailer, I wasn't really sure how they would work that in here, but they somehow managed to make me care about a bunch of absolute nobodies here. And that's just what's truly impressive, is that he was able to take a group of characters that don't even have superpowers, but they're ultimately human at their core, and it's simply just, it works so well, as it gives Peacemaker, as a character, a whole lot more layers to him, where he has this backstory, his connections to his father. Even our side characters, like I think Adebayo is probably the best one that's besides Chris in Season 1, as she's conflicted in her loyalties to her mother, as well as this new group of friends that she formed, but she's conflicted between the loyalties, all just done so unbelievably well. And it's a show that actually makes you want to keep watching throughout the entirety of it. Every time a new episode dropped, even before doing homework, I would go and watch the new episode, because it was just so exciting for me, as the episodes ended in a way that made you want to watch the next one, and it was just that bingeable. And so many small moments in the show hold so much emotions. You get a scenario in the 5th episode, I believe, where Peacemaker and Adebayo are sitting down talking in the room, and then Adebayo, once again, as I mentioned up earlier, is like torn between her loyalties, and the gut-wrenching part is when she does what her mother tells her to do, and that's kind of just like, it was just a gut-wrenching moment, as the thing that made her stand out was that she was like the sweet more innocent person in the group, and she's just like kind of turned into this soldier by her own mother. Like, just small moments like that are emotional. Even one of the final shots of Judo Master just eating Cheetos ends up being kind of like, oh, you kind of feel bad for him. Like, it's just so many small moments like that are so impactful. And it might not be the biggest in scale of these projects. It might actually be the smallest in scale of these projects. But it is so effective at what it does. And it also has an awesome intro sequence. But because it's not concerned with being big and blockbustery, it's just concerned with telling a deeply emotional story with characters that you actually care about. I think of these projects, it's easily James Gunn's best one, and so for me, it's my favorite project. There you have it, that's my ranking of all the DCU projects when I split Peacemaker into 2 seasons. Down below in the comment section, share what you thought, not what you thought, but share your ranking of James Gunn's DCU projects. Thank you guys so much for sticking around to the end. I'll see you in the next one.